I wonder if you can try to resist yourself right now, imagining standing in a tropical island. It is dawn, the sun is rising, the sand underneath your feet is warm, the gentle breeze is warm, brushing against your cheeks, and you find yourself looking on your left and seeing mangrove trees. The mangrove trees are anchored deeply in the muddy shores, and their roots are purifying the oceanic water. They're taking out the salt, something that no other roots can do. And next to those mangrove trees are dartfish, and they are translucent, and their chromatophores, their pigments on their skin, are able to change the color to match the color of those roots to avoid themselves being seen by the predators. And you see in the distance, a flock of birds are arriving, and you wonder where they come from. This is a tropical island. And you realize that you don't know where they're coming from because they just flew 3,000 miles across the ocean, and they used the Earth's magnetic field, the sun, and the stars to somehow find land. What an amazing intelligence they have. And as you fast forward the day upon which you are deeply immersed in, dusk comes, and the moon's gravity recedes the ocean tides backwards. And as the ocean recedes, you see fiddler crabs, a form of crabs. They scuttle out of their burrows just in time to feed and to hunt, in perfect sync with the ocean tides, which was caused by the gravity of the moon. And as you look up, next day you wake up, another beautiful day, more gentle breeze blowing against your cheeks. You look up and you see clouds, white, full clouds, and you wonder, my goodness, I wonder what got these clouds here. And you realize that the wind pushed them. The wind, which is caused by the Earth's rotation, and the air pressure caused by the difference between cold and hot air, and the sun that is shining and soothing you ever so gently is providing you vitamin D. And then you start to reflect upon your body. My goodness, this body is so incredible. It is something that I didn't design. It goes through its own stages. I cannot stop those stages. The liver knows how to detoxify the blood, something that I could never do on my own. And the cells in my body are programmed to replicate themselves 40 to 60 times on average before they stop and no longer do, giving chance for brand new cells to come. My goodness, who programmed this? And then you look on your left or your right, maybe we'll look on the right now, and you see bees, which are magically applying what's called a traveling salesman algorithm, which was only discovered by mathematicians in the 20th century, which means that the bees know how to find the shortest path between flowers. and you think, my goodness, how do they learn this algorithm? And you find out that the way that the bees do this is they, from their center, go to the nearest flower and they memorize the distance. Then they come back and they share that information with other bees. Then the next day, they go to a different section of flowers. Then they memorize that distance and compare it with the first field of flowers. And every time they reach out into the field of flowers, they compare, and shortly they discover the shortest path to the nearest field of flowers. And you think, my goodness, what intelligence is this? And then you look into the oceans and you see the rubbish being brought back. And you realized this ocean must be alive by the presence of Ishvara's laws. We throw things into the ocean, and the ocean finds a way to throw it back at us. Not because it's angry, but because this is how the laws are set up. And you even then see behind you a field of sunflowers. And as you reach closer, it soothes you, the yellow color reflecting the sunlight, ever so beautiful, smiling at you, these sunflowers. And the seeds are so well arranged in what's called a Fibonacci sequence that you look at their pattern and they waste no space in the way that they are arranged. And you wonder, my goodness, what intelligence is this? In fact, I have been fascinated by sunflowers for a long time, and I thought I'd print out a sunflower for you so you can see and appreciate Ishvara's intelligent pattern. Please study this pattern. Can you see the pattern on it? Look at the perfect arrangement of those seeds in the center. Arranged so well that it is the most perfect arrangement there is to fit as many seeds as possible in that circular shape. The intelligence of nature. And we only later discovered how to replicate this by studying Ishvara's intelligence. So now, as we think about all of these connections, the sun providing you vitamin D, feeding the plants with the sun energy, being converted, food for the plants, and the synchronization of the crabs with the ocean tides, to the point where you can even put those crabs in a lab and they will still respond to the ocean tides because they're so connected. And those birds, how they're able to find such long distances land to rest on, and how the roots are able to extract the salt from the ocean, and how the chromatophores of the fish are able to mimic the nearby surrounding, the colors, to make themselves invincible or invisible to the predators. And how the Earth's rotation has an effect on the wind, and that wind moves our clouds, which moves our rains to islands, feeding us fresh water. Can you see the connection in all of these things? How can you not appreciate the one intelligence which has to know about the roots of the mangrove trees, the crabs, the moon's gravity having an effect on the ocean tides, the ocean returning back the rubbish, the body, liver knowing how to detoxify the blood, going through stages of aging, which is designed, which you cannot stop, how the bees are able to do their incredible salesman traveling algorithm, how the sunflower is able to arrange those seeds in a perfect way that even artists have a problem sometimes replicating. How can you not appreciate the one intelligence that has to know about all of these examples, in order for all of them to work in unison, completely connected, dependent upon each other, thriving by each other's presence, depending in each other's light. This is one intelligence that we call Ishvara. And you look anywhere around you. These are just tiny examples that I provided, and you can see the presence of this intelligence operable in all facets of your thinking, of ability to communicate, to respect another human being. You don't have to learn that. It comes in, built in. Thereby, we, as those who are committed to the truth, in fact, everyone is committed to the truth, start to find devotion in our lives by the presence of God all around you. You are swimming in God right now. It just takes moments to appreciate it. Sometimes we can go to work and you're surrounded by people and you are given a chance to see not person plus God. There is no person plus God. It is God alone. Understand? It is God alone is here. There is no, I see a tree and I see God behind the tree. I see God manifesting as a tree. I see God using this instrument right now to speak about this very intelligence. So all around you, you can, if you choose to, spend time looking into the phenomena of nature and connecting with that very presence and knowing that very intelligence that I'm speaking of is in Sanskrit what we call parinami upadana karanam. Parinami upadana karanam means it is one intelligence which is constantly reshuffling and reorganizing itself in a form of laws and objects which are being governed by those very laws. And those objects are divided into both sentient and insentient. And one of those objects, you are sentient, and you're able to have an inquiry about this very intelligence. And when you inquire into the creator of all of this, you call that creator Ishvara. And Ishvara, as we said, is the truth of Ishvara is awareness, and that awareness is always known to you. It's never not known to you. It's always known to you as an ordinary presence, an ordinary consciousness that need not be claimed or told by someone that you have it. You know you are conscious. If there is one thing that you know more than anything else, it is that first person, I am. That very ordinary amness, presence, beingness. There's many words that people like to use for it. Awareness, consciousness. That is what we call the final reality called Brahman. It's not hard. It's not supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be complicated. In fact, once Einstein looked at a formula on a whiteboard and someone said, "What do you think about this?" And Einstein said, "It cannot be true." And he said, because the more complex something is, the farther away it is from the truth. The truth is the simplest of the simplest there is. It cannot be complex. Therefore, to make this a complex journey using 10,000 Sanskrit words to get to the truth, it's not necessary. Ordinary, down-to-earth language that you can relate to. No mathematical formulas, no amazing, long recitations. The truth is simple. And that truth being awareness, consciousness, known to you right now as the very presence in whom or because of which these words are being heard, because you are, You are as that very presence. That's why this conversation is known to you, awareness. That is the very truth of Ishvara, this intelligence which has manifested your body, your thoughts, this world, the laws, which has put you in situations that you have to transactionally work yourself through. So even if you do know this reality, it's quite amazing. Ishvara doesn't give you a break. Or should we say Ishvara doesn't give your body and mind a break? It still delivers you challenges that you have to undergo. And through those challenges, knowing that you, the awareness, the substance of all that is, are ever free of this entire display of names and forms, there's a certain ease that can ensue upon you. It's a certain ease that you enjoy, that it's not so serious anymore. There's a certain kind of a relaxation that you enjoy, that even if wonderful things come into my life and I don't get them, it's fine. I have everything already. It's a cognitive understanding that you, being the truth of everything, you already have everything. And that provides you so much comfort, so much ease, and it takes the pressure off having to have things go your way where they don't have to go your way anymore. It's okay. And while you know this knowledge, you start to wonder about last week's diagram, if there is any more clarification that we need to understand this reality before we move to chapter 3. Before I do, Arsha has her hand very tired, being held up for a couple of minutes. Nothing to say. Nothing to say.
No, I just wanted to say that to see the beauty of the Lord, there are a few examples that I also think is the pomegranate, the fruit pomegranate. It's stacked so beautifully and without any space. I mean, even when we try to, I don't know how nature can put that in such precise, because it doesn't have confer to a specific shape. Each and every um, seed, if you may say that, is it's in all shape, doesn't have a standard shape, and yet it is so well put together without any space. And every time I peel the pomegranate, I just remember the beauty and give it a thought. And I just thought I'll share that. That's all.
Wonderful, wonderful. And now that, having said that, pomegranate is for Asha. Is there any particular pomegranate for the rest of us, which incites reverentiality or the presence of this intelligence that you would like to share?
What you have just explained is oneness. You can put awareness and oneness. And this is something, when you were talking about the crabs, what really, if you've seen a termite colony or an ant colony
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the jungle or in the savannas, and the way they work, if human society worked on that sociological principle, no problems.
No problems. Even,
Absolutely.
yeah, even they put there was an empty colony. It was an empty colony, so that no ants were harmed in the process. They filled it with some concrete, and then they let it cure, and they took the soil around it, and they just had the pure structure of the ant colony in a concrete form. And they wanted to figure out what kind of patterns they use to discover the shortest path between two tubes that they built. And once again, it was not any random colony. It was a very well built, and intelligence was within the pattern of the tubes.
So in a termite colony, if you look at the architecture, the structural science, there's air conditioning, there's heat exchange, there is sharing of food. I mean, this is nature, it's wonderment. So basically, even in a leaf's pattern, you will see this wonderment.
This is
in the
it.
way the margins are arranged. If you look at the tree shape, how it fills up to get the most light.
Yeah.
And then you say there is an intelligence. Is it just by randomness it has happened? So I just wanted to say that. So whenever I go for, as you go running, every morning I will be walking in the woods.
Ah, that's our chance, right? This is it. Pankaj?
For me, whenever I go out and whenever I look at trees, particularly the banyan tree, as resplendent green, spread out, I feel I am looking at a form of God. And that gives me a great inspiration.
One and a slightly longer explanation, but I agree with Pankaj. So I find that walking in the forest and looking up into the canopy from below, you can see amazing patterns that you just think of the intelligence that is behind why those patterns are the way they are. But a longer version is, it's a little ironic because most of the proponents of cosmology kind of argue against the need for a creator, and yet looking at the way, looking at the theories behind the Big Bang, and how protons were formed, and how those protons eventually cooled down, coalesced into gas and dust, and then, gravity took over, the stars were formed, nuclear fusion, more within those initial stars, you get heavier kind of elements, then they explode, and then later on that coalesces into another star with heavier elements, fusion occurs, you get the heavier elements, eventually 13 billion years later or 10 billion years later, you get life on the planet Earth, and that's how it started. That's all there is to it. It's just all that intelligence and how it all got created.
It's mind-boggling. It really just, it moves me when I hear, when you say that, how we are now to the point of a worm or a germ or amoeba develop this capacity to ask, who am I?
Following on a little bit from what Michael was saying, I think it was Terence McKenna that said, in order for the cosmologists to explain everything from the Big Bang, you have to grant them one free miracle. You have to give the cosmologists one free miracle to begin with in order to be able to explain everything else in terms of cause and effect.
One free miracle, well, that's called Ishvara's grace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and that requires a certain humility and
for sure.
Yeah, open-mindedness.
Yeah.
You see, so even if we have the scientific basis for explaining the Big Bang, still there's that irk in the background. But what was before? And how can you say before when time started, at the Big Bang onwards?
Yeah.
So how can you now reconcile that before and after? And they will say something like, if I remember, dark, they use a term like dark matter. In fact, dark matter comes afterwards, but they will use a term. So Big Bang.
Dark matter, dark energy.
Yeah. So it came from another substance. It came from another perceptible inferential substance, you see. But Vedanta shows you that two additional realities that science needs one free miracle, as you say, and that is the presence of intelligence, Ishvara, and Brahman. So these two realities is what Vedanta specifically specializes in, and through that it reconciles, or as someone said, it brings oneness to all things. So that is that's why we need that kripa Ishvara's gentle stroke, sometimes a slap too, hey, wake up, you're going deeper into these quantum physics models, and you're just losing yourself in these numbers and formulas. But for a moment, pause and take a big picture. What about you, the subject, who's there amidst all of these calculations? Who are you? So they are very good at object analysis, but the subject is left out. The very I who is doing all of these formulas. Greg.
Yeah, it's fascinating as well. You look at mankind and the way that it has populated the earth and its cities and its towns and the roads and the highways and how it's all connected. When you look from above at the intricacy of all that, it mirrors that of neurons and even the whole universe. If you look at how the universe is designed, what scientists have recently discovered, that it's much like a neural network, how everything's really connected. It kind of looks like the neural network that is seen in the human brain. It's just really incredible.
Yeah, and it's also with our solar system, right? Our planets, they are making up a solar system, and a solar system is within a galaxy. And then, a galaxy is now, there's many galaxies also, and every galaxy has solar systems, and every solar system has planets and a star, and every star serves a purpose, and every planet, heavier elements come together, and some of them, they harbor life. In fact, it makes you wonder now, as you think about our little place here called Earth, if there is life elsewhere, considering this galaxy is one of trillions of galaxies that we know about, trillions of galaxies. And every galaxy, by the way, has several 100 billion solar systems. We're just one solar system, by the way, in our Milky Way galaxy. And our solar system has Earth. So it makes you wonder the vastness of this intelligence, how it just projects this entire universe. And you can either spend a lot of time studying it and sometimes even get caught up in it, or you can start to ask a different kind of question. What is my connection to all of this? Where do I fit in? And so for that, you cannot use a telescope or a microscope. You need a pramana that is independent means of knowledge. It means that, you see, with Vedanta, sometimes if you find yourself with some situations, they will say, prove to me that what Vedanta is saying is true. But Vedanta is called an independent means of knowledge. It doesn't need science to back up Vedanta. The way that it works, it's science. Vedanta shows a reality that cannot be shown any other way. So it's not like we, in Vedanta have to prove to science how science, is, what they're saying is more true. We don't have to prove anything. Science needs to prove Vedanta. So it's the other way around. You see? For example, if you have a means of knowledge called a microscope, and I say to you, hey, through this microscope, you can see an atom or a very tiny organism, and you say, I don't believe you, prove it to me. Well, I'm offering you an instrument. It's called a microscope. That's the means of knowledge. And you say, I'm not going to use the microscope. I have my science. I have my own, ideas of what the earth is. And you just say, well, you're going to miss out because the microscope is going to show you something that you cannot get through any other means of knowledge. Same way, Vedanta is this unique means of knowledge that no other form of science can show you. Therefore, it is something that has to be, that's why we say you need faith in this means of knowledge. If there's no faith, then you say, what is this nonsense? Where is this intelligence? And you say, well, it's all around you. But then you say, yeah, but that's just a random coming together. That's just, probabilities coming together. Out of millions of probabilities, they all form this kind of an, order. So you see, so even if you present a certain reality to a non-ready mind, it's not going to capture it. And that's why Vedanta is not for everyone. That's why we need a certain level of maturity to not resist the teaching, just to see how this makes sense in my own experience. So therefore, how would you then, little test for you, argue or deal with a situation that someone's challenging you and saying that, Vedanta, what they're saying is wrong, how would you deal with that? Would you feel like you need to be invested in that conversation? Or would you come from a certain place, remembering your own self about 20 years ago? If I told you about this 20 years ago, or some person, would you have listened? No. You would have probably wanted new age material, give me some aura balancing, give me some rocks, put it here, or, touch me somewhere. That was at that stage, and it was a reality for you. So this means you were simply not ready back then. So now, how would you, if at all, engage with someone that challenges you in what you understand? Or would you engage at all?
No, I wouldn't want to be engaged in a conversation.
You would not want to be engaged in a conversation, okay? And what is the background process that's making you choose that? What would you have to understand to not want to engage?
From a state of being at peace with myself, I don't want to be engaged and unnecessarily spoil my peace of mind, right?
I would say there's no win anyway. Like what you said before. So my views have changed over time with this. At first I felt like I had to prove that my point. And now I just see that, like you said, somebody has to be in the right frame of mind to have that nuanced thinking in which they can grasp what you're actually saying. Otherwise you're just wasting your time. And then you just end up frustrated. So what's the point? You just, it is what it is. And like you said, only certain people it will appeal to, depending on how they can question things themselves.
Even in Advaita Vedanta, this happens in India a lot. There is even discussion or debates between Advaitins. Such as, there were a common, I know you got hands up, I would like to hear you. I'll share this. There is a debate between whether ignorance is a positive entity or a negative entity. It's called Jnanam Abhava and Jnanam Bhava. Jnanam Abhava means it's a negative entity. That means ignorance is the absence of knowledge. And Jnanam Bhava is ignorance is a positive entity. That means it's an avarana shakti that positively veils your nature. So it's it's actively there, and you have to remove it by the pramana. Now, and they're having this discussion, trying to prove to each other whether ignorance is a positive entity or a negative entity. You see what's happening here? Like, why are you here? Like, isn't the whole point to free myself from these debates, these discussions? I don't care whether ignorance is a positive entity or a negative. The point is, I don't know, and I want to know. You see, so even if you have a highly sophisticated mind, even then, it will miss the point of this entire journey. It will turn this into debates, intellectual debates, when all you want, end of the day, if you're honest to yourself, is to come to a place where I can be amidst these debates, and there is no incentive, there's no that fire to kind of involve myself and let me prove my point. Let me show you the right point of view, because you're free of the whole drama. You know how long it takes, how much a qualified mind needs to go through hoops and loops to come to a point where it's not interested in this. It just wants to know the truth. And that takes some time.
I'd say whether I would get into a conversation about it would really depend on how I perceived how receptive they would be to it, or not necessarily receptive, but if someone's just going to argue that it's all nonsense, then I probably wouldn't bother.
Yeah.
And if someone was really interested in it, I would probably not give away too much. I would say, I'm not a teacher, I'm a student, so you need to go and find out from somebody who can actually teach it.
And what about also finding common ground? Because sometimes you just, cannot quite disengage with another person, or maybe you don't want to, but you can find common ground, and you can, like a child, right? You're not kind of saying they're dumb. You're just saying, I have to drop my language to their level because it's my responsibility, right? To do so, to connect. So my question is, to what could you then change your, your rapport to to where you can connect. To what can you connect with someone that may not share your views? That's the question. Are you already prepared to change your discussion? Okay, so that's the real, that's the art of staying in a debate and being totally okay in a space where you know this is, you know, it's still kind of half-cooked knowledge, but there's no that kind of, I have to make my, you know, my point here. This is reduced because, like Lorena said, you can't. Number one, people are, you know, holding on to this idea. I've been protecting this for 5 years. I'm not going to allow you to crumble my deck of cards because I took so long to build them. It's not easy. It takes time. And you know how it is with a child. You know, if you tell them that there's no Santa Claus, you know, they're going to not like you, right? So you kind of say, no, there's a Santa Claus, and, you know, he flies around delivering, you know, gifts through people's chimneys. But the kids don't ask, wait a minute, mom and dad, if Santa Claus was delivering gifts, which are all 100 grams, suppose, on average, and he's delivering to 300,000 people, so you would have to times 300,000 by 100 grams. That's about 30 tons worth of gifts in a reindeer that is supposed to accommodate a size of 5 by 2, you know, 5 by 2 squared. So you got a little box like that. So the kid is not going to ask that because they're not at that level. And you don't have to instigate them into that kind of conversation because they will come to see the flaws of their thinking much later. And based on that, you can chill out and connect to those things that are much more grounded and, you know, simpler. Okay, what else do you want to say? Lorena's got her hand up.
I was just going to say a better way to do it, to get a curious mind going, like I'll use your Santa example, is to ask those questions. Just leave it at a question, and then that opens the doorways to thinking more about things critically. So say, how would Santa get down a tiny little chimney that's got a vent at the top that doesn't allow anything? Or, you know, just yeah. Perhaps just offer a question rather than an answer.
Good. Makes sense. Yeah. And questions can brilliantly be a way to get through innocent questions, fun questions, to start a you know, an inquiry process. And sometimes questions can also be a much more effective if you want to give someone a way to think about something, you know, because there's this tendency to offer them advice. Here's the advice, what you should do. But if you think about it, does anyone ever know your situation as better as you do? Never. So if I give you advice, it's fine. But what I'm really doing is I'm giving one facet of a much bigger, more complex, dynamic issue that you don't know about. So like Lorena said, it's effective, or it can be, to ask questions that gets the person to think at a different kind of perspective. So this is also a good way to engage with those debates. Is there any questions lurking in your mind about the nature of reality, who you are, Brahman, Ishvara, how it's all connected? And you know, it's still mystical. This knowledge is still perhaps kind of mystical, or you think that Brahman is supposed to be an experience for you, or it's just big reality that, you know, is supposed to be, you know, an event. It's supposed to happen sometimes in the future. Or you understand that this reality that the whole spiritual field is chasing is this ordinary amness that you are never not, right? This ordinary consciousness awareness that is always evident to everyone. So it's funny because the mind, I'll tell you why it's hard to understand, because the mind has since childhood always converted everything into an object, okay? And whatever you wanted, you got. You wanted peace, you were able to, you know, quantify peace. I have peace, right? I have peace. I've gotten peace. You wanted joy. I have joy, right? So it was a lot of this going on for centuries, for forget centuries, millennia. So when the mind hears about something that is formless, nirgunam, nirvikara, changeless, shashwatam, it never undergoes modification, it's not born, then it kind of starts to want to imagine, right? Because the guru keeps saying it's not an object, it's not an experience, it's not like a taste, it's not a sight, you can never see it, you can never feel it, you can never intuit awareness, it can never be sort of smelt or heard in some subtle way. It's not any form of thing that you can say 5 years ago I had a special experience in my meditation and I felt oneness. Even that oneness, okay, that was just another sensation in your presence. That's why you're able to remember it. So it's as good as a memory. That's all it was, just a memory now. So this is the reason why people have this hard time trying to kind of grasp Brahman or this reality, because you want it to be, your mind's trained it to be an object, but it is not an object. It's always the ever-present subject, the one that is here, present, available to all of these objects that are going on. Objects of sound, object of this face talking to you, objects of you now having thoughts about that. That is a sound. I don't think it came to the other side because Zoom takes it out. So all of sounds and objects, okay, they are processed by this instrument that you are wearing. And I want to quantify or show you what's the mechanics of this, how does experience happen? And who is the, why is there awareness of the experience? Well, it's because you are here, because you awareness are here. See, when we say experience, see, when you teach Vedanta, you always have to start with the final reality. You can do from the bottom up, or you can do up downwards. So awareness, or just simply I am, okay? I know that I exist. We said that awareness, right? Like you dream, when you dream, you have this ability to, your mind, right? In you, the conscious being, there is this power called your mind. And your mind can fool you, can't it? Ever had a nightmare? You thought you were being sliced in half. You thought you were jumping or being catapulted into, a fire, or it was a nice erotic dream or something, right? And you were totally, right, immersed in it. And there were objects, there was an object, and there was a subject experiencing the object, okay? But the entire dream was a manifestation of your mind. So your mind was able to create these tangible forms that you saw, you experienced, that were, delicious and tasty and juicy and painful. And all of this was a manifestation of your mind. So we can, in this case, put your mind, call it just the power, right? Power to manifest. Okay. But where is this power to manifest right now? Where is that power? It's dormant, right? It's dormant. It's there, but is there a dream right now? Is there a dream world right now? Like your personal dream? It's not. Does that mean that you don't have the power because the dream is not here? No. You have the power. It's just that the power is not activated yet. So when it activates, that very power, which we said is Jnana Shakti or Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti. Okay. So that power is Jnana Shakti. In other words, it has its intelligence. It has the blueprint of what a tree will look like, how the sun will, how far it will be from the earth, how the laws will operate and gravity will hold you down, and the velocity of, or the speed of light, right? So it's got it's got a blueprint for how the creation will look like, what the creation will how it will work together, right? How the planets will be arranged, and the Earth will, you know, be just the right kind of distance from the sun to harbor life, and it will continue to orbit the sun. Okay. And right, as Michael was saying, when the star explodes, then it releases, it actually creates heavier, dense elements, right? And those elements like gold, iron, and nickel, they create this Earth that you're now walking on. By the way, did you know that you got 0.2 milligrams of gold in your blood? We don't know why. You're just there. We still haven't figured it out. Now, where did that gold come from? That gold came from the explosion of that first star, which consisted of hydrogen and helium, because that's what happens when it explodes. It creates newer, denser elements. One of them is gold, and that gold has now found itself in your blood. And that gold was not there when the first star came after the Big Bang. It was not there because all there was two elements, basically hydrogen and helium. Only when the first star exploded, then the heavier elements created. So gold is a new invention, and now it's in your body. So now this blueprint for all things, how they will come together, it also needs a certain force to project that blueprint outwards. Another model is, you can call this projecting power, right? A power that's like your mind. It projects the knowledge of the mind, doesn't it? What is projected in a dream? All of the things that you know about. Isn't that true? All of the things that you know about, all of the characters that you know about, everything that your mind has remembered, those things get projected in a dream. So that projection, and it puts it and holds it all together, this knowledge, and creates walls and solid objects. That is the Kriya Shakti, that force, that projecting power. And when you're in this dream, you're now having delicious meals with, you know, somebody who you met, and you're discussing, you know, the nature of ignorance. You're having these debates about the nature of ignorance. Is it jnana abhava, jnana bhava? Is it, and how is it related to mula vidya? Just constant debates. And one of them is listening, eavesdropping on a conversation, and they say, well, wait a minute. So now that we have this world, right? And we are in this world, right? What created this world? And as someone says, well, this very power that was in potential. And this power in potential was in you. One self, one conscious being, which enjoys a power called Maya. And this power then activates. So now it's activated. Activated. Okay, and when it activates, it creates what's called a jagat. Okay. And then the person in the jagat, the world asks, well, who created the jagat? Or what created the jagat? And then instead of saying Maya, because what does Maya mean? It means power in potential. So you can't say Maya because Maya means potential. So now when that power activates, it gains a new name called Ishvara. Ishvara. Therefore, Ishvara and mind is no real difference. Because Ishvara is Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti. Maya is Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti. Except Maya is in potential. Ishvara is manifesting right now. Therefore, Ishvara, and we call this God. So now, one of these beings, right, is you. Right now is you. What's this you? The one that's sitting on your chair right now, listening to this session and asking, who am I, right? Who am I? So the word I refers to this little person. This is how we started. So the two bodies, right? Not two bodies, but one body, two arms and two legs and so on. But now if you investigate this entire diagram, right? What is the cause of all of this? Like what pervades the rock, you know, the leg, the idea of who you are? Because even to say, who am I? Is that a thought? It's just a thought, isn't it? Because that thought was not there before. It's just like matter, just different kind of matter. It's like a thought. So you say, who am I? What am I? You know, what's this world? What is the laws? All of that is pervaded by what? Ishvara. That's why we say all that is here is Ishvara. Now you say, but what is Ishvara? What is the truth of this intelligence? That's, as we said, is parinami, upadana. Upadana karana means the material cause. Upadana karanam. Okay. So what is the material cause? That's what upadana karana means. What's the material cause of your body right now? Right? It's Ishvara, it's intelligence. What's the material cause of the thought about who you think you are? What's the material cause? What makes up that thought when you say, I don't know who I am, or I haven't got it? I don't think I've got it. That's a thought, by the way. I don't think I've got it. What's the material cause of that thought? Intelligence. Okay? Because it's just a bunch of neurons that come together and they form a narrative called, you know, I've got a doubt about something. So no matter what you think or what, you know, what you see, what is it that you are thinking and seeing? Ishvara manifesting as that thought or that object, like a rock or an emotion or a doubt or whatever it is, okay? So parinami means changing. Now, what does it mean, changing, upadana karanam? Well, this intelligence is parinami, it's changing. It has to constantly change to account for the constant changes in the universe. Look at this, even right now, if I drop, so what's the material cause of this? Ishvara, okay? If I drop this, what has actually changed now? Ishvara has changed. In other words, this is nothing but intelligence, because remember, the power, like your dream, takes that knowledge and it manifests it into solid objects. Here's one of them right now, solid object. This is nothing but intelligence appearing as this object. I dropped this and it fell. What changed? The material cause got reshuffled and reorganized to manifest from here, frame by frame, and it happens so quickly that you take it for granted. But it's like this, frame by frame, frame by frame, and you call that time. Look at this, it's falling down. How quickly did that happen? Maybe half a second. So now what is time? Think about time. Suppose I slow this down and it's falling like this. And you say, my God, this is taking 7 seconds. So what is time now? 1 second? 7 seconds. So one took 1 second of time, which is nothing but Ishvara, and the other took 7 seconds or 5 seconds of time, which is nothing but Ishvara. So what is time now?
Rate of change.
Who said that? Steve, say that again.
Rate of change.
Rate of change. The amount of changes that happen in reference to that, we call it time. So all you're experiencing is change, constant reshuffling of intelligence. Right now, even as your body is shaking, moving around, it's just intelligence shuffling around. And the amount of those changes that are happening, to that you give another name and form, which is nothing but intelligence, called time. Okay? If a lot of changes happen, like this, done, right? 1 second worth of change. But now it's like constantly changing. Okay, that's 5 seconds worth of change. So all you experienced was change that took longer. You saw more change, and in reference to it having more changes, you attribute another name and form called time. So what is time really, if you think about it? It's nothing but the amount of changes that are being witnessed in reference to names and forms whose reality, whose material cause is this very intelligence right now. And this intelligence is nothing but Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti, which is a power in you, this awareness, which is always known to you as self-evident I am. So now we call this one reality. We call, just for the sake of, one name, we call it Brahman. Brahman. So Brahman. Now, last week I said, how do you prove right now that Brahman, whose nature, whose defining words are Sat and Chit. Sat and Chit, which is existence and awareness. Okay, so let's go back to your dream and then I'll bring it to the macrocosm. So in your dream, suppose you're dreaming right now. Remember that entire dream is your own power, which makes it seem like you, the conscious being, are now the subject and everything else is an object. Okay. So suppose you see a cloud in your dream. The cloud, just the fact that you see it, right? The cloud is, so the cloud exists. But what also, the fact that you said a cloud implies there is awareness of the cloud, right? So cloud is, but so is awareness of cloud, right? Cloud is cloud awareness. Okay. Tree is because of tree awareness. Friend is because of friend awareness. Absence of perception is, just so you don't mix up perception and awareness, absence of perception, that means there's no hearing. Hearing is perception. So absence of perception is because of absence of perception, awareness. And then you see, wind on my skin. Wind is because of wind or that force is. Heat is, that's why it's heat. Heat is because of heat awareness. Now, what is my point of this inquiry? What is common? What can you get rid of here? Names and forms, right? Names and forms, no matter what they are. What does every name and form in this example depend upon? Sat and Chit. So every name, so we can make two observations. Every name and form, which is nothing but modification of existence, because we said last week that this power, right, it borrows existence and it molds and shapes it to look like a name and form, to look like a tree or a cloud or fire or whatever it is. So not only does every name and form depend upon it existing, but also what also remains, it's always existence and awareness. Now, if existence and awareness always remain, then does that mean they're different? No, because if they both remain equally, they can't be different. That which remains all throughout is one and the same reality. In fact, you could say that existence and awareness is one reality just understood from two different standpoints. So this ceramic is, right? It exists. So when I say is, what am I referring to? I'm referring to, right, the existence. It exists. That means it's borrowing existence to manifest. So it's nothing but existence manifesting as this ceramic cup. But this reality is not just existence, it's also awareness. Remember, it's one and the same. So now this cup does not have what's called a subtle body. A subtle body is like a mirror. You have a subtle body. So think of, for example, you as a physical body, standing in front of a mirror, okay? And you are seeing your reflection, okay? So you're seeing you, right? Now, suppose you kind of compare you, the one that's standing, to existence and awareness, to Brahman, even though Brahman is not an object. Suppose you compare that body that's standing to to Brahman, and you present a mirror, what would the mirror reflect? You, Brahman, right? In this example. So it's going to reflect I am, that isness, that means I am, there's a reflection. So reflection is, but there's also awareness of the reflection. Okay? So this means that mirror, your mind being like a mirror, is able to reflect both aspects of the one reality. It's able to reflect existence. That's why you say am, that I is. When you say I am, what you're referring to is I exist. There's no doubt about that. I is. But it's also able to reflect, because of your subtle body, that that awareness, consciousness, the first principle behind any thought that arises. In fact, the principle that was there before the thought arose, which is I am there. What is there in every experience, in every phenomena? I am there. But is every phenomena there in every phenomena? No. Joy is not there in hatred. Hatred is not there in peace. Peace is not there in a cup. Cup is not there in a peace. But what is there in peace, in joy, in happiness, in confusion, in epiphany, in intuition? What is always there? I am, I am, I am, I am, I am, I am, I am. Sat and Chit all throughout every experience that is popping in and popping out of your awareness. So now, who's listening to this conversation? You say, I am listening to this conversation. And this I, as we said, is able to, exists. You know that you exist, right? And you also know that you are absolutely aware. Aware of what? Aware of this person perceiving these words, hearing these words, hearing this discussion, inquiring about what this means. Is that not a perception? Suppose your mind is saying, Andre, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is too confusing. This is too many, too kind of intellectual, or, too many formulas. Is that not a perception? Is that not an occurrence that just happened in time? But what's there in that perception? I am there. The same I that will be there maybe when the class finally finishes and you rejoice in having pulled through this session successfully. That I will be there very much also, observing your body and mind, rejoicing of having pulled through the session. You see? So you can't ever get off Sat and Chit. It is the truth of this entire diagram of the potential of the jiva, of the world, of anything that you look at, of time, of space. Now, when I say the truth, what am I talking about? It is the substance because of which everything is. What questions arise, if any? What questions could arise? What questions want to arise but are not going to, because they're still in potential?
I have a question based on what you just stated. So are you saying that I is the Sat and consciousness is the Am part of it? Are we splitting it so?
See, when you say I right now, you don't have to say I, but suppose you just say I. What comes up when you say I? What comes up for you?
This comes up.
Okay. And this comes up, but whatever this was referring to, it was, there was an awareness in that moment, was there not? Suppose I put you into hypnosis and you forget about your physical body. It's possible for a moment. Kids do it all the time. They daydream. So a moment ago, right, you were saying, this comes up, the body comes up and so on, right? And then now you're in hypnosis and you're totally oblivious to your body. And in hypnosis, I say to you, what comes up now? And then you say this, just like you said now, this. But what is this in hypnosis referring to when there's no awareness of your body? It's referring to the next, whatever is available. It's referring now to, the thought, okay? Now, Suppose you go into a samadhi, meditation. And now even your sense of right, who you are, right, or what you are, or your life just completely just, goes into potential. And in samadhi, you come out of samadhi, and I ask you, what was there in samadhi? And you say this. What are you now referring to this in samadhi when there was no physical body and there was no thought of your life or the fact that your name was Sheila or who you were, whether you were female or male? What was this referring to?
Just the I-ness.
The I-ness. So therefore, that first I-ness is the fact that there isn't always a present conscious being which can never leave, who's always present. That's the first I. And then amness is just referring to that fact that that conscious present being exists. Because just to say that you're aware implies that you exist. You can't say that I am. You can't say that I'm aware unless there's an existence of an awareful being.
But Andre, for that you have to be alive to be able to say that, right?
What's your point now? Because I know where you want to go with this. Mixing up sentiency with awareness, right?
How is aliveness different from awareness?
Okay, sure. So when we talk about aliveness, we're talking about prana. Prana is the life force that makes your body tick, makes your heart beat. It's that energy that you feel after you drink coffee, right? There's a lot of prana. Prana is fully activated. Or sometimes that prana is depleted, and that feels very draining, or it feels like the body's not, it's just not feeling strong, right? That strength of being alive, that weighs down. And we all know this experience when we're highly sick. I don't know how sick you've been, but in very, very sick, it kind of feel like life is coming out of me, right? Life is coming out of me. But in that moment, when you say life is coming out of me, I'm feeling so weak. What are you referring to, right? That's weak. You're obviously referring to your body. But is your awareness not equally there as much as is available when prana and aliveness is fully, popping and dynamic and strong and carrying yourself upright when you've drank 10 cups of coffee? Is that awareness of amness, of I, is that not equally there throughout? You see? So even aliveness or prana fluctuates. It goes up and down all day, morning, however you feel, evening, however you feel. That's aliveness. Awareness is the presence because of which my aliveness is known. So the awareness always remains equally throughout your aliveness, which is fluctuating. Now, someone's going to follow up and say, yeah, but how do you, what happens when you die? How do you then demonstrate, how do you demonstrate that? Well, you can now refer to, I can just refer to some, near-death experiences where you had many, many cases reported of people, going through hard stops, and they come back later. Of course, no one's going to believe them because everyone wants to experience it for themselves. Only then they will believe it. So you can take some faith in this aspect and understand that even when the body stops and heart stops completely, even then, there is something about you remains. Now, what remains for these individuals who come back is their subtle body. That's why the subtle body, sometimes they will say that I was able to hear the surgeon saying words. I was seeing my body being resuscitated on the operating table. And nobody believes them. Say, no, you're just imagining. It was just DMT release in your brain. That's what happens at the time of death. It's to cope with the death. And so the scientists will provide their kind of, chemical, biological reasons to explain away the fact that there was something that was left after the physical body stopped. Yeah. Otherwise, even that subtle body can be resolved. And you experience this every single night in your deep sleep, where there's no experience. That's the resolution of the subtle body. But now look at this. If you were that subtle body which resolves in deep sleep, if you were that subtle body, that which remains after the person dies in near-death experience, would you go to deep sleep? Because that would mean the end of you. That's what happens in deep sleep. It's basically a resolution of the subtle body. You wouldn't, because you will be afraid that I will go to I will go out of existence. But nobody has any hesitation to, in fact, you look forward to deep sleep, don't you? You look forward to getting rid of your subtle body every single night. That's why deep sleep is so attractive, because your subtle body is that last sort of matter that the self is wearing. Okay, right now the self is wearing two kinds of matter: the physical, dense matter with mass, but it's also wearing the subtle body, my life, my fancies, my desires, my trials and tribulations, you know, my identity, my past. So even that personality, that subtle body, that resolves in deep sleep, and you love it. Why? Because you love that which remains and only remains in deep sleep, which is you. You love being you without any form of limitations whatsoever. That's why we call moksha freedom from limitation, freedom from the physical body, that I am the physical body, and freedom from the subtle body, that I am my life, that I am my fancies, my desires, all of the good things that I've done, all of the mistakes I've made. It's painful to wear that. It's painful for the self to wear that. It kind of like adds weight. And you just can't kind of, you know, you spend a lot of time just, you know, I need forgiveness. Oh, and please forgive me, Lord. Okay, it's fine. You can ask that. But, you know, what self cannot be forgiven because the self never did anything. Self is the content of all things, all pervasive, is without any attributes, and its power is the one that manifests the entire world of dream. And then the one character, you know, backstabs another. This one claws another. This one then takes some, you know, funny revenge, catapults them into a different kind of, you know, state, right? So all of this play is happening because of your own power that's creating this dream right now, this world. And you're one of those characters in this world right now, listening to another character who's also a manifestation of your very power. And you, all pervasive, where is one place where you, the conscious being, are not in your dream? And is the dream ever separate from you, the conscious being, because of which that dream is taking place? No. So what is pervading the entire dream world? I am, Sat and Chit. And how is that Sat and Chit known to every character in the dream? I just said, I am a conscious, awareful being. So all of this that you're now experiencing, and you will continue to do so for this week, once in a while you can remember, this is a play, a nice, wonderful play that's been going on for a long time. And it's all happening in me, in oneself, just like the whole dream is happening in the dreamer. Whole thing is happening in oneself, which is all pervading, one awareness, which is the truth and the content of everything. So now, when you say I am, okay, don't go any further, just I am, ordinary I am. That I am is the exact same awareness that is making Andre right now aware of his thoughts. It's not a different awareness. Understand this. It's like the space. The space, okay? It's inside, the one all-pervasive space is inside Andre's mind, okay? In fact, it's pervading Andre's mind. It's also pervading, filling the blanks, your mind, okay? One space. So now, what's happening? When your body moves in this all-pervasive awareness, when your body moves in you, what's constant? I am, I am, I am. But it seems like when your body, right, moves, it seems like your I am, right, is isolated. It seems like the I am is isolated in your body, doesn't it? Is that your experience? When your body moves from here to over there, it seems like I am moving. That's because of the presence of your body and mind. You can't stop that, by the way. That's the power of Maya. That's exactly how you feel in a dream, right? The whole thing is like one, but it feels like the subject is constantly moving. In fact, this is what verse 72, last verse. Esha brahmi stitif partha nainam prapya vimuhyati stitvasyam antakale pi brahmanirvanam richati.
Artha, Arjuna, this is what is meant by one's being in Brahman. Having gained this, one is not deluded. Remaining therein, even at the end of one's life, one gains liberation.
So the basis of this verse is Krishna wants to provide us a closing statement. And he wants to say that your effort is never wasted. He says that even when you start this journey, as you have started this journey, no effort in the universe, no action can go wasted. It's just a law. Every action has a reaction. So this means that even if you're unable to retain this knowledge and you feel like it's not happening for you, don't worry, something's happening underneath. Did you know, for example, that the bamboo tree, the roots of the bamboo tree, they take about 2 years to spread underneath the ground. You don't see anything. You don't see anything growing on the top. And you're thinking, my God, 2 years I've planted this. I've been watering this bamboo tree for 2 years and nothing's going on. You know, no progress. But what's happening? The roots are spreading. They're spreading. So like that, when knowledge is being listened to, like the bamboo tree, they're spreading all throughout your personality and you don't even realize it. So if you ever feel like no progress, this is a universal experience. You're not supposed to sort of feel these tangible experiences, these tangible results. It's not like that. It just happens slowly, gradually, little by little. And then he says, the reason why you cannot regress once you start this journey is because the Gita is not prescriptive. Rather, it is a book to show you how to re-examine your life, to use critical thinking and to re-examine every facet of your life. Now, why is the Gita not prescriptive? The reason is because, firstly, as I said, you know your life a lot more than anyone else does. So if the Gita was all about do this, don't do that, how effective would that be in the real world? Especially in today's complex world? Not at all, right? So this means, first of all, instead of teaching you what to do, what not to do, it teaches you how to think about what is it that you're doing. In summary, if you could call the Gita, you rename the Bhagavad Gita into modern language, it would be like this: critical thinking for re-examining the nature of reality. Critical thinking, that's the main word of the Gita. How to apply your critical thinking to re-examine the nature of reality. Therefore, it cannot be prescriptive because you're not a child who received the Gita knowledge. Arjuna. What kind of experiences did Arjuna have before he was ready to receive the Gita knowledge? Quite a lot, right? He's married and brothers, successful, and a lot of Gurukulam, just all sorts of skills and negotiation skills and strength. He's not a runaway. He's a fully engaged man, woman in the world. Even Yudhishthir was not quite qualified to receive the Gita. So you can see, if I tell Arjuna, no, just go and do this and don't do that, I'm talking to the wrong guy. You need to be talking to an adult. So the Gita is for adults who are using their critical thinking skills, and they don't want prescriptions. They want ways to look at situations from different perspectives. Eventually, when you are qualified enough and ready to receive this knowledge, and it takes place, what happens? Then your identity changes from the small individual. That means your I is no longer bound to your body-mind. What is your I referring to now?
Sat and Chit.
Sat and Chit, in other words, the cause of this whole thing. Okay, because it is the one substance from everything comes. So you can't be different from that substance. It's just logic. When you understand your nature as Atman or self, what do you understand? You know that, firstly, that you're ajaha. It means you're unborn. Now, what does unborn mean for you?
You're not bound by time and space.
It means you are always existing.
See, all-pervading space. When a body-mind called Pankaj is born, then the space inside is as though born, isn't it? It seems like that now because of the birth of the body-mind called Pankaj, or whatever your name is. Okay. Now, how do you free the space inside this cup? You got two ways.
One way is to get rid of the cup.
Good. Now, to get rid of the cup, that's called Nirvikalpa Samadhi or Samadhi. However, what's going to happen after the Samadhi ends? The cup is going to magically put itself back. So you've only kind of enjoyed the all-pervasive awareness for a moment. So that is not a solution. What's a better solution than destroying the cup?
No, I was saying realizing that you are part of the space outside as well.
Super. Excellent. In other words, I don't have to get rid of my thoughts or my body. I just realize that the space inside is not different from the space outside. It's the same space. So what if it appears sort of bound and contaminated and it's like it's moving? So what? That's the job of Maya's kind of, Kriya Shakti. Leave it alone. Okay. So this means you understand that, it's inconsequential to you, all-pervading space, that there is a cup walking in this world. It's inconsequential. Leave the cup alone. They're just manifestation of your power. One of your manifestations is called Andre. Another of your manifestations is called Pankaj. Another manifestation is called Greg. Another is called Sheila. Another is called Rani. Another is called Radhika. They're just a bunch of manifestations walking in this field of existence. But it's inconsequential to you, the all-pervading. Okay. Now, what else is consciousness? It is nityaha. Nityaha means it's eternal. So this means the coming and going of this cup, is that equal to the coming and going of the space?
No.
No.
So the cup comes, it's inconsequential to the space, and the cup goes, it's inconsequential to the space. So when the cup breaks, what remains? The very same space that was there before the cup came into existence. It is nityaha. Consciousness or reality is also shashwataha. Shashwataha means it is unmodifying. I put Coca-Cola, take it out. Are there traces of Coca-Cola in this space? No. Why are you shaking head, Greg? You're saying Coca-Cola is going to affect the space? No. Okay. Now I take the Coca-Cola out and I put juice, and I take the juice out. Has juice left some traces in the space? No. Why not? Because space is attributeless. Nothing can stick onto that which is attributeless. So this means that, is it consequential if your mind gets filled up with dirty, naughty thoughts? Does it kind of, define me, the space, the consciousness? If you have wonderful thoughts, does it define me, the all-pervading consciousness? No. So this means the kind of thoughts that you have about you as awareness, as existent, awareful being, has no consequence on you. So now think about all those thoughts that you thought about. Oh, I'm insecure. I'm small, I'm not getting it. I'm never gonna, be somebody. I need to be somebody. I need to be somebody. That's a thought. That's a desire. Does that thought, desire have any consequence on you, the awareness because of which that desire takes place? No. It's like Coca-Cola. It's like Fanta. They're just a bunch of different thoughts that are going inside your mind, emptying themselves out. Tomorrow, you've got, what else do you want to put? Green tea? Out. What? Coffee next time? Out. No consequence on you. And what else is consciousness? Puranaha. It is ever new, and it doesn't go through any kind of modifications. What does ever new mean? It means it's always awareness. It's never going to be anything but awareness because it's attributeless. You see, only when you add another attribute, it's no longer new. But if you don't have attributes, it's always new. It's always itself. It's always what it's always been. Therefore, it's Puranaha. Understanding this, you are now who? A Brahmi. A Brahmi, that means one who is at ease with one's identity. That means you've now gained this knowledge and you're at ease with who you are. You're not contaminated. You're not tainted by past thoughts, past karmas, past deeds, none of that. You're now freed forever. That means your identity is no longer, I am this much, but I am the whole thing in whom this entire world is occurring, manifesting, unmanifesting. Okay? Therefore, what is moksha? Moksha is a paradigm shift from taking I from this individual to the causeless cause of the universe. And there is no doubt about it. Somebody can come to you and challenge you and say you're wrong. You're just living in a deluded world. It doesn't touch you. Someone can say Advaita has got it wrong, or you're just, what do you know? What do you know? I've had these people come to me like this before, especially when you look younger and you got an older face. What do you know? It doesn't touch you at all. Zero. It's like basically showing you, hey, look at this. Look, you're like, okay, thanks, Andre. And what about it? It doesn't touch you at all because you're so firmly established in the knowledge that nothing can move you. No doubts, no further information about the scriptures moves you. That means I can now expound to you the entire Upanishads, and you're no longer going, wow, this reality is so amazing. I have to hear more. Tell me more, wow, I don't know. That goes away. The Upanishads have done their job. The Gita has done its job. Now they become just a lovely reading to appreciate this knowledge, right? But they don't move you because they have done what they're supposed to do. Therefore, the summary of chapter 2, we've come to the conclusion that chapter 2 consists of 2 sections, self-growth and self-knowledge. And it consists of 3 main parts: karma yoga, Sankhya yoga, meaning what?
The knowledge, jnanam.
Yeah, jnanam, knowledge of reality. And what is that knowledge of what reality? It's gonna say knowledge of Brahman, right? What are you talking about, Brahman? Knowledge of self, knowledge of who I am, because you are the reality. So it's a knowledge about I. So Sankhya yoga, karma yoga, and what else? The last few parts, someone said.
Jnana yoga, sthita prajna.
Sthita prajna, descriptions of a sthita prajna. Okay, and therefore, last I'll chant Om Tat Sat Iti Shrimad Bhagavad Gita Tsu Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyaya Yoga Shastre Shri Krishnarjuna Samvade Sankhya Yogo Nama Iti Yodhyayaha. Therefore, the Gita teaches knowledge of Brahma Vidya, who you are, but also Yoga Shastra, self-growth to qualify the mind. And it is a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. And what kind of dialogue is it? It is a samvada. Samvada is when one person is an expert and the other person is yet to learn. Therefore, it's not an equal relationship when it comes to a subject matter. Like you're the teacher, I'm learning. But when you're hanging out as friends, then you can be equals, okay? And therefore, the main topic is Sankhya Yoga. And this concludes chapter 2. Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.